we take her at her word, right? And all forms of sort of challenging a certain claim made by, say, Robin DiAngelo herself, or a person of color accusing a white person of being racist in a certain way. If that's true, then that actually does seem to be a case where Robin DiAngelo is shutting down all possible disagreement, right? It's what people call a Kafka trap, right? Because even trying to deny the claim in question is further proof of the claim. And so that does seem to be one instance where I think actually they give an example of shutting down disagreement.
So here's my one big rebuttal, and again, we've gone over and over that I most basically agree with you. But my one thing is, of all of the authors, of all of the theorists that they've mentioned, the one you agree is a valid problem is by far the most well known, like by the average person. And I don't think that's a coincidence.
Well, okay, but that has no bearing on the thesis of this chapter.
No, it doesn't, and it doesn't undo all of the problems with the book. But I think it does explain why it's easy to accept a lot of these claims.
No, I get your point. Yeah.
Easily, because and why there is an actual problem. Like, there actually is a problem with critical theory. It doesn't have to be critical theory itself. Sure. But there is a problem with critical theory. And the problem is the only thing anybody seems to know about it.
Problem is the only thing anybody seems to know about it.
Like you said, people are usually arguing against Robin DiAngelo, right?
Well,
yes, sure.
They would be very justified in writing an anti-Robin DiAngelo book, but that's not what they did. So you seem to care a lot about, like, the ability to discuss things openly in academy. Like, the people mentioned in this chapter are teachers that I studied with, and I find it to be a chilling effect that there's now a book, a pretty popular book in certain circles, that presents them as kind of like this social problem, while like misrepresenting them very strongly.
So here's my argument.
That's a chilling effect for academy.
Here's my argument. I don't disagree with you, but you know how this is a weird analog to make. But so, like, Marx wrote a lot of things that really grabbed a lot of people because the current capitalist system was not serving them, and in fact was causing a lot of problems. And so, in a way, capitalism is what caused Marx to be popular, and Marx is what caused capitalism to fix itself, right? I mean, I think that's pretty true.
Well, I mean, the latter claim is very contentious.
Really?
Like, it involves the idea that capitalism has fixed itself.
Not perfectly. I don't mean perfectly. I mean, the popularity of Marxism pushed capitalism to make some adjustments. I think that's at least fair.
Sure. Okay. Go ahead.
Where are you going with this? Like,
I think that these theories, and this is my claim from the beginning, are having an effect that is unintended, but it is having an effect. That's why I wish this book was more about how this is seeping out into the world, and why there are problems on campuses, and where there are kids being taught things that are nonsense. And instead of attributing it to the people, instead saying, hey, there's some bad stuff happening that seems tied to what you're talking about. You might want to be very clear about the fact that this is not what you are talking about. This is why I say that they have a bad PR problem. They don't...
It's not PR. It's the claim of the book. Like, yes, that's a thing they could have claimed. They're very clearly not claiming it. They're misquoting. They're misattributing claims, and just putting things in people's mouths.
Okay.
So just saying that there's a kind of like side version of this book that might have worked, like that's a very weak defense to me.
I'm not defending the book. I agree with you on the book. My point is the popularity of this book, the fact that it got written and it was sold and a lot of people know what it is not just because people want to believe things. It's because there actually are problems.
But who said that? Who said otherwise? I mean,
No, that's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying is I think the popularity of this book should be telling the theorists, the philosophers, that I can no longer be safe in my academy in a place where I'm actually responsible now for making sure that this is understood properly by more than people just in the academy. And maybe I'm responsible for actually calling out people.
Be responsible for making sure other people understand them correctly? That's something over which they have no control most of the time.
Oh, well, number one, critical race theorists, if they want to be taken seriously, should call out Robin DiAngelo as not a critical race theorist, like openly constantly. And just being like, this is not what we are saying. This is not what we are saying.
Okay, so this is the whole thing is like there are some critical race theorists who agree with DiAngelo on some things, and there are others who don't. It's not like this fucking boogeyman that James Lindsay says it is, one unified thing.
Fair, but you could at least, like Sam, you're critiquing this book, right? And I get why you're critiquing this book. There's a lot to critique. And because you're in the field of philosophy, it's important that you're critiquing it. But I think it would be very, very helpful if philosophers were critiquing white fragility openly.
Well, I mean, I'm presenting a paper at the next American Philosophical Association.
That's great. I'm not like accusing you personally or anybody personally. What I'm saying is, if you're nervous about this, I wouldn't just attribute it to bad actors. I don't think that's like, you can say that Lindsay and Pluckrose are bad actors, and we could have that argument. It's to me, I'm not going to get in that argument. I can't defend this book, whatever. But the fact you can't say that about everybody who's bought it and is loving it and feels like it's describing. Well, no, but who feel like it's describing a real problem, because to a lot of people whose lives should never have been, who have never been affected by this, have been deeply affected by it in ways that are really, really anger-inducing. And
again, that's not what this book is about.
No, I get it. I'm responding to the idea that, like, you're concerned about the fact that this book is popular, and I think that's a correct response. But I wouldn't be concerned about the people. I would be concerned about the fact that it's coming from something. There's something real. It's not just people who are like scared of the boogeyman. I mean,
it's not all or nothing. We can be concerned about both of those things.
I totally agree with that. And I think that having a nuanced discussion about it is a great way to do it. But I think I get nervous that the response is going to be anybody who reads this book or who agrees with this book is just believes that Robin DiAngelo is the boogeyman.
No, so to be clear, I can't get mad at people for reading this book and then coming to extreme conclusions, because I can't expect people to do all the fact checking that I do. That's why I do it, so I can explain it to other people who don't have the time or the resources or like the background knowledge to be able to go in and do all that.
I don't think that this book is going to cause people to come to conclusions. I think this book is going to reinforce people's ideas about things they've actually experienced in their lives.
Well, it can do both of those things. It can reinforce that, and it can cause them to come to more extreme conclusions than they endorsed before.
True.
Or if not even more extreme, certain specific ones about certain specific scholars. Like if you read what they say about Christy Dodson and thought that it was all accurate, you'd be like, Jesus fucking Christ, dude. How is she employed?
Well, here's my point. If somebody had gotten ahead of this, because there was the writing on the wall has been there for 7 years or more that this book was coming, something like this was coming, and that people were like primed to just go along with it, is if instead that it's the same. The reason I bring up the Marxism and capitalism thing is like, obviously it would have been better had capitalism regulated itself, right? It would have been better.
You're saying that kind of an imperfect book that highlights like a phenomena that is very real is still something that we should take seriously.
Kind of, yes. Yes.
So is that how you feel about Robin DiAngelo's book about racism, which is also kind of a real problem?
No, I think
highlights it.
I do not. I think that I don't feel that way about her book.
So what's the difference?
The difference is that she says things that are patently absurd.
I mean, patently absurd in what way?
I'm gonna return
like
to
obviously
Jackie.
False.
Yeah, like the Jackie Robinson thing was that clinched it for me. That was just like, you are an idiot. You are like I read that and I was like, you are racist. You are an actual racist. Robin DiAngelo.
I don't think that the Jackie Robinson thing. So like I actually like had also those kinds of moments where I was reading the book where I had the thought like, yo, Robin DiAngelo like might be like genuinely like racist in the traditional sense of the word, of like having these deeply internalized feelings about the superiority of the white race. Like the way that she words things sometimes suggests that. I didn't get that about the Jackie Robinson thing. But for instance, right, so there's this claim about the Jackie Robinson thing, okay? There are just as patently obviously false things in this book.
Mm-hmm.
So what, right, you haven't distinguished them completely or given a complete explanation as to why you think that this book should be taken seriously, whereas DiAngelo shouldn't.
I think, okay, maybe I got to rethink that. I think, I see your point.
Like maybe, I think the better response would probably be like, look, we should take both of these works seriously because taking them seriously is necessary to expose the bullshit in them.
I guess for me, they both illustrate how little people know about anything, because like the world that Robin DiAngelo describes is not the world that we live in at all. And the world that in the academic world that these people describe is not the academic world that exists at all. I mean, they might touch on something, but overall, the world they're describing is not real. That is not the reality we live in. We do not live in a extremely racist culture. We don't. It is less racist. I mean, if anything, it is more racist now than it was 10 years ago because of people like Robin DiAngelo.
Okay.